about 22 of them in Eugene. This is mine right here, River Road. And typically they meet maybe once a month, and they're there to address issues in the neighborhood. Could be traffic, could be crime, could be anything that people in the neighborhood decide they want to deal with. It's usually volunteers. I don't know of any neighborhood programs where neighborhood leaders get paid. But this is a huge part of civic culture, of people being engaged and people being involved in where they live. Wow, we really need that. So in Eugene, we have a neighborhood program. I'll show a couple more pictures of that in a moment. This right here, any town is going to have emergency preparedness, blizzard. We're kind of due for an earthquake where I live. We're kind of due for a big earthquake. Could happen at any time. I'll show another image about that. Communities of faith. When you think about what I understand, the core ideals of most communities of faith, and I was brought up Christian, I'm not Christian, I don't identify with any community of faith, but I can appreciate what their core ideals are. The core ideals be care for the natural world. They are modesty of lifestyle. They are uplift the spirit, and they are service to the community. And you couldn't come up with a better set of ideals to operate from. Wow, those all fit into a solidarity economy. Faith communities ought to be leading the charge in doing this kind of stuff, and maybe some of them are. We have some of this going on in Eugene, but it needs to be 1,000 times more. But any city or town is going to have faith communities, and they ought to be big allies. And if you go to a church or a synagogue or a temple or a mosque, they deserve some encouragement, for being on board with doing some of these things. They're everywhere. So faith communities ought to really step it up. Okay. So this is just a little bit more about our neighborhood association here. Most neighborhood associations are going to have a little bit of a budget to put information out to the neighborhood. You communicate with the neighborhood. We have injected permaculture into some of our information that goes out to the neighborhood. That means that this really nice little magazine we had one time went out to 5,000 addresses in the neighborhood. I don't have the money to put that, to do this, but the city does. Well, it's up to the neighborhood to decide what goes into the newspaper. The city doesn't tell us what to do, we do. So we have a whole page on beekeeping, school gardens, transforming suburban properties, and this went out to 5,000 addresses in the neighborhood. Particularly this neighborhood meeting was about creating resilient neighborhoods, drew about 100 people, and these kind of ideas about permaculture, these sort of approaches to a safer, more secure, and healthier neighborhood. This went out to a lot of people I didn't even know. So neighborhood programs can be extremely useful for putting out this kind of information. Oh, this was a group in another neighborhood in Eugene. So some of these pictures show citizen initiative, and I'm sure you have your counterparts here of people taking time out of their own lives to do something positive for the community. I can't think of a more noble thing to do. So in this neighborhood, there was a street that wasn't a street. There was a street here and a street here, but there wasn't anything in between. And the neighbors had the idea, let's have a garden there. So they did. They went to the city, and the city was cooperative. This is the early going of what has become grassroots, common ground garden right here. So this has become another platform. They have workshops there. They have work parties. They even get some money from the city through something called neighborhood matching grants, where the city has a program that you make an application to the city and you say this is a positive community project, we'd like a little funding. It's usually not much, $3,000, $5,000, $7,000, $8,000, and then the applicant comes up with a sweat equity, to match the money. What a great way to empower people. So that's what this is about right here, and this has become a platform for all kinds of positive stuff. In Friendly Neighborhood, it is called Friendly Neighborhood. And some people have even bought houses in this neighborhood because they know this is going on. And of course, that's a lot of fun and a lot of food too, okay? Emergency preparedness, I mentioned this. Almost any city is going to have an emergency preparedness department. I know Eugene does, I can guarantee you Worcester does too, or wherever you're from. They have an emergency preparedness. You think about seed saving, you think about gardening, water catchment, front yard gardens, one of my favorite things, permaculture, local food. These all help create a more, a safer, more secure, and resilient neighborhood. And that's exactly what emergency preparedness is about. But their agenda's kind of more limited than these kinds of ideas. But this fits in perfectly. What a great idea to go to the emergency preparedness program in your town with these kinds of ideas and say, hey, would you be interested in helping put these ideas out? Because they have city staff, they go out and do programs to different organizations in town. They probably need a little bit more than just a suggestion, but to get them thinking this way, because this really completely fits into emergency preparedness. They ought to be doing this kind of stuff. I've talked with them in Eugene, and they'll agree, yeah, this is all a great idea. They need more than just a little bit of encouragement. When I get back, actually, we're going to get more into trying to work with these people because they're good people. This just historically hasn't been a part of their agenda, but it needs to be a part of their agenda. So here's something that almost any city has that could be a great conduit. And of course, these all connect to the solidarity economy. In a sense, emergency preparedness should be putting out information about solidarity economy. Again, communities of faith. This is a garden in Eugene that's behind an Episcopal church, 2 acres. Wow. This is a group called That's My Farmer. And the fellow I mentioned who lives down the street from me, he started this group where I think there's about a dozen churches and a synagogue, and they are organized so that they, in a more purposeful, in a more planned out way, they support local CSA farms through this faith-based network called That's My Farmer. It also educates about local agriculture. There's a lot of organic farming where I live, and there needs to be a lot more. But here is a network of faith-based churches and a synagogue that are at least, beginning to address these kind of issues. So this has been going on like 5 or 6 years. They have a yearly get together. I think this last year there were like 300 people there. So this is a good example of faith communities in action. This is, I'll say about our Filbert Grove a little bit more in a moment, but this is a church youth group. A lot of different types of entities, groups in the community sometimes want to go out into the community and do volunteer work in the community. So we have a program in the city of Eugene where the city actually helps organize work parties That's what 3 city employees do. They help organize work parties, and it's up to the people in the neighborhoods. Yeah, go back, because it kind of did that by itself. I'll say that again. The city has a program to help organize work parties, and it's up to the people who are out in the neighborhoods to identify what kind of a work party it would be. We have a 65-tree Filbert Grove on public property in my neighborhood, and we've been restoring that over the last couple of years, and the city's been a big part in helping us to do that. They bring the tools, they help to promote it, and what we do is get the word out in the neighborhood that we're having a work party. So this was the first year. I collected about 50 pounds worth of filberts from this grove. We had to clear out the blackberries. We had to do a lot of pruning. We did a fair amount of organic fertilizing. But the city was a big help in doing this. And they're involved with other projects around town too. This isn't the only one. But the city is empowering people at the neighborhood level to do stuff. It's up to the neighbors to make use of these programs, and I think that's what a city ought to do. I think neighbors, people ought to be doing more of the work. But and as the economy kind of continues downward, people will have more time for doing this. But I see sort of a peaceful, gradual kind of a takeover of a lot of what a city does, and it becomes much more diffuse in the neighborhoods. But that's going to depend on a functional civic culture as well. But this stuff teaches civics too, okay? Front yard gardens, just another awesome land use. When you talk about urban land use, what do we do with the surface of the ground, you know, in an urban place or a suburban place? A front yard garden, turning a front yard into a garden. You're visible, great way to meet people, a great way to build a community in your neighborhood. I know everybody who has a front yard garden, they all say, yeah, God, people stop and they want to ask you, gee, what are you doing? In my neighborhood, every summer I see more and more front yard gardens, and it's great to see that. You talk about another program called Neighborhood Watch. They ought to be promoting front yard gardens because you're out on the street, you know, you're looking at the street, and that's, every neighbor should be happy somebody's got a front yard garden, you know, on the street, because you're out there, you know, making friends, and you know when something's going on that shouldn't be going on. So front yard gardens. I have these posters out here, and one of them is specifically about front yard gardens, okay? Work parties, again, I bet everybody's been involved in a work party. Doesn't necessarily have to be involved with food, but that's a good one. But again, people being engaged in where they live, doing something positive and learning, probably learning some useful skills. So this is kind of part of social activation of getting people out doing things in the community. So work parties really fit in with all of this. Okay, here's the Filbert Grove. This is what it looked like. This is kind of nice. A local TV station did a little segment on the Filbert Grove. This is Lorna. She works for the city. I hope she ends up being a next door neighbor. And so doing these positive projects, you shouldn't depend on it. But you know, if you get some media attention, that takes the whole thing out even to a wider audience, because this needs to go out to a wider audience. But this is fun, and it's really a beautiful location. Again, here's the church youth group. But this is on public property. It was mentioned here, reclaiming the commons. This is reclaiming the commons. This doesn't belong to anybody. Anybody can come and gather filberts. So there are probably places in any town that could use some attention, could use some restoring. This is just what our local, in my neighborhood, example of that is. Bike tours, I said something about bike tours already. You could do a walking tour if you had enough stuff to look at nearby, but to get people out and realizing these things are going on in your community is just great. I know Jamaica Plain is going to have their first, from what we know anyway, first kind of eco garden public interest bike tour sometime in the spring, and that's probably the permaculture meetup group in Boston. If you want to connect with that, would be the permaculture meetup. Probably be on urban homesteading too. So actually, those are really important kinds of assets anywhere, or these online meetup groups also. Wow, those can be a great way to connect with people. This is a great example of a bicycle-powered mobile cannery. And this little project received money from the city of Eugene to build this right here. All the things that you would need for canning fruit and vegetables are contained in this cargo bike right here. And the Center for Appropriate Transport, which is one of my favorite places in Eugene, they had a neighborhood matching grant to construct a mobile cannery, is what that is. So they recognized the opportunity and they made use of it. Okay, just something quick about block planning. Got just a few more pictures. I know this is a lot. It's really good information. In Eugene, there is a land use tool called block planning. And block planning is when the people who live on a block and the property owners agree they would like to make certain changes over a certain period of time to the block. It doesn't make regulations go away, but in Eugene anyway, the regulations become much more flexible. It becomes more performance-based compliance rather than prescriptive. Usually, if you want to do something on your property like building, the city says this is what you have to do and this is the way you do it. But with block planning, the city says, we want this outcome and you show us how you're going to do it. So this is kind of a fictional before and this is kind of a fictional after. You can make all kinds of changes to a block with edible landscaping. This particular one, this might be a quiet street. You can even close off traffic except for emergency vehicles and have people park at the end of the street and open up all these garages and parking lots and driveways and put them into a better use. You would have much more opportunity to do kind of a block design for edible landscaping. This could be a place that could provide new opportunity for small business. Certainly a lot safer for everybody, for kids, for elders, for everybody. You could imagine some new construction, getting rid of some concrete, permaculture design. If you think about the kinds of jobs that could be created doing this, every city ought to be promoting block planning. They're not in Eugene, they know about it. If somebody's interested, we'll talk with them about it. This needs to be high on the agenda. When you talk about a solidarity economy, you can just imagine all the jobs that would create, doing positive kind of human scale labor and planning. These are just a couple examples in Eugene of places that are not block plans, but they have characteristics of block plans. This is a housing co-op, and they own about 12 properties, and they're able to manage those 12 properties kind of like it was a block plan. So this used to be a parking lot right here. They took that out. There's a little bit more high density residential here. Other places in the co-op, people can have some garden space. They don't have any garden space here because it's more dense, but it allows a more effective use of what's on the block. I know other cities that have this kind of opportunity too. Yeah.
We have about 15 minutes.
15.
I'm curious to know how people hear and how it applies to our experience and our lives and our communities, and just to get some feedback from the audience.
Let me just finish the couple of slides here. We'll
All
get to that. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for telling me. Okay, some pictures from East Blair, okay. This is a suburban backyard in Davis, California, where all the backyard fences are down. So, wow, lots of community building opportunity there. There'd be fences all over the place. Yeah, go ahead and continue. Local food production, wow, the short story in a larger scale, transforming non-food agriculture into food-producing agriculture. If you want to know more about this, you can do a search on the Willamette Grain and Bean Project in Eugene, okay? Intersection repair, reclaiming spaces for people. Awesome in Portland. You could find things about intersections. City repair, Portland, Oregon. If you were to do a Google search on city repair, you find an awesome website, a really great program here, okay? Oh, another example of neighborhoods and the city and volunteers turning a trashed out space and turning it into a food forest in Olympia, Washington. The city wants to do more of this now, okay? Emergency preparedness, there's actually a group in Port Townsend, and they are working with the county emergency preparedness department and putting out permaculture ideas. And the county's fine with it, you know, because it makes a more resilient community. They're actually doing it there, okay? Food forest, 5-acre food forest early in the works in Seattle. If you were to look up Beacon Food Forest in Seattle, you'll find out more about that. Once again, it's citizen initiative and the city being reasonably receptive to it. Okay, good partnership. This is the last picture, transforming our homes, culture, and economy. Multiple benefits. I just made this graphic. It's public health, it's local economics, it's uplift, it's human potential, maybe our greatest renewable resource is positive human potential, it's local food, it's resilience, it's a solidarity economy. I'll just leave that one up right now. So go ahead and restate what you just said a minute ago.
So yeah.